Are you truly ready to follow my path? I ask you this question not as one who doubts your ability, but as one who wants you to recognize the choice before you, the magnitude of this decision, and the blessing it holds. You stand at the crossroads of your life, and with every step, you are confronted with choices that will either align with your plans or with my divine will. You are tempted to cling to what you can see, what you have crafted in your own mind, yet there is a path that surpasses your understanding, a path that leads to something greater than you could have ever imagined. The question remains, will you trust my plan over your own? Think for a moment about the disciples, those men who walked with me, ate with me, and followed me on an unpredictable journey. Their lives were turned upside down, not because they had great plans for themselves, but because they chose to abandon their plans to follow the path I laid before them. Peter was a fisherman, not a preacher, not a leader of a movement. Yet when I called him from the boat, he didn't hesitate. He left everything behind, the safety of his trade, the familiarity of his surroundings, to follow me. Imagine that, leaving behind everything you know for the unknown, trusting that I would lead him to a greater purpose. Peter could have easily clung to his boat, to his fishing nets, and insisted on following his own path. But his surrender opened the door to a life of transformation, not just for him but for the whole world. He became the rock upon which I built my church. Now ask yourself, how often do you find yourself holding onto your boat? You hold on to the plans you've made, the life you've constructed, because it feels safe. But I am not calling you to a life of safety. I am calling you to a life of adventure, a life of faith that will take you to places you never thought you could go. Yes, the path I lead you on might seem uncertain at times, but it is in that uncertainty that you will find my strength, because as you step into the unknown, you are forced to rely not on your own abilities, but on my power working within you. Let's talk about Abraham for a moment, a man who was promised a great inheritance, a land flowing with milk and honey, and a legacy that would last for generations. But do you remember what God asked Abraham to do? He asked him to leave behind everything, his family, his land, his comfort. And Abraham did not question. He went where I told him to go, without knowing exactly where the journey would take him. Genesis 12-1-4. Can you imagine the faith it took for Abraham to leave his homeland, to trust a promise that seemed too large to be real? But through his obedience, God made him the father of many nations. Abraham didn't just follow a plan. He followed my plan, which was greater, more profound, and more life-altering than any plan he could have ever made on his own. Now look at the story of David, a young shepherd boy chosen to be king. When the prophet Samuel came to anoint David, he didn't even think to call David in from the field, because he was the youngest and least likely to be chosen. But I saw something that others didn't see. I saw a heart that was willing to follow my will, not his own desires. And though David was anointed king, he didn't immediately take the throne. Instead, he faced trials, battles, and years of wandering before he assumed the crown. David's life was filled with highs and lows, but through it all, he trusted my will over his own. His obedience and faithfulness, in the midst of hardship, led to the establishment of a kingdom that would stand forever. From David came the line of the Messiah, and through his willingness to surrender his plans, the Savior of the world was born. So now let's bring this all back to your life. You too are being called to step away from your own plans, to lay down your dreams, your fears, and your desires at my feet. You are not being called to a life of mediocrity, but to a life of greatness. Your life is part of a much bigger story. Just as the Israelites had to leave Egypt to enter the promised land, you too must be willing to leave the familiar behind in order to step into the life I have prepared for you. You will encounter obstacles. You will face opposition. But remember this, I am with you, and I have already overcome the world, John 16-33. The path I have set before you may not always be easy, but it will always be purposeful. And though you may face challenges, it is in those challenges that you will find my strength. Think about Joseph. He was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, thrown into prison, and yet he never wavered in his trust in my plan. His life was filled with suffering, yet through that suffering he became the second most powerful man in Egypt, and his story saved not only his family but entire nations from famine. What seemed like a series of unfortunate events was actually my way of preparing him for greatness. Do you see? The suffering you face today is not the end of your story, it is simply the beginning of my work in you. It is a necessary part of the process of transformation. The truth is, God's plan is not just about what happens to you, but about what happens in you. The experiences you face, both good and bad, are shaping you into the person you were always meant to be. When you trust in my will, when you surrender your plans, you are allowing me to shape your character, your heart, and your future. This is why the path I lead you on is not always the easiest, but it is the one that will bring you the most fulfillment, the most peace, and the most joy. You were made for this journey. You were made for greatness, but greatness is found only in surrender. You cannot achieve true greatness without first yielding to my plan, for your path is not about achieving what you think you want, but about receiving what I know you need. Every step you take in faith brings you closer to the person you were created to be. It is a journey of discovery, a journey of growth, a journey where the path may not always be clear, but the destination is guaranteed. I have prepared a place for you, a place of peace, of purpose, and of fulfillment. And all you need to do is trust. Trust that my will is greater than your own. Trust that my plans are far more perfect than your dreams. Trust that I have a purpose for your life that will not only transform you but will touch the lives of those around you. But how do you begin? You begin by surrendering. Every day you make a choice to surrender your will to mine. In the small things, in the big things, you can choose to trust me. When the world is loud and the demands are overwhelming, take a moment to be still and ask, God, what is your will for me today? Allow yourself the space to listen and follow the quiet leading of my spirit. You will know my voice, for I speak in whispers and nudges, in peace and clarity. And as you follow step by step, your life will unfold in a way that will far exceed anything you could have planned on your own. So, I ask you once more, are you ready to follow my path? To trust in my will over your own? If you are, then know this, the path will not always be easy, but it will always be worth it. For I, the Lord your God, am with you every step of the way. And together we will walk into a future full of hope, of purpose, and of glory. Trust in my plan. Surrender your own. And watch as I work in ways that will astonish you. The best is yet to come.